Hey guys! So I don't play a ton of video games these days that aren't Pokemon or Monster Hunter, but there is a third that I find myself going back to and sinking way too many hours into, and that's Splatoon. I adore this game, even though I suck at it and can never seem to win, especially now when the servers are filled with Splatoon masters, or just cheaters I guess. So to save myself from the frustration of competitive, I find myself always turning to Salmon Run. I definitely prefer this mode. I think the co-op experience just feels so much better to me, even if this mode is so punishing sometimes. So imagine my absolute delight when they announce a spin-off game that is exclusively Salmonid focused. I also just so happened to have gotten a commission for my favorite Salmonid boss that perfectly coincides with the release of this game, so it all just works out so well for me. So here we are making the horrorboros. And I'm excited to finally get into how all that came together, so let's do this. This time, instead of jumping straight into the stabbing, I want to make sure I have a nice strong wire going through him so I can pose this big man properly. I double up this wire and pray that it's enough to hold up his weight. This definitely does not end up being enough, and I was foolish to think it would be. I know I say this a lot in my videos, but we need to keep the size of this thing under control. Luckily for me, he doesn't have a ton of details like a certain somebody did, so I think I can actually do it right this time. After awkwardly twisting extremely long pieces of wire together, I start wrapping it up in wool. I went a little overboard with the length here, but that's okay. It's better to have too much than not enough. I wrap him up until the length of the body looks about right to me and then tie it down with yarn. He is a very long boy, which means it will be very annoying to work with. It'll all just be flopping all over the place and get in the way and just make general maneuvering a major pain. But we just gotta deal with it, cause it would not really be possible to work in pieces here. If you know me at all, you know that I hate felting around wire with a fiery passion and try to avoid it until the last possible second. And if you're wondering why, I will put up a counter for how many needles I break throughout the whole thing. But here, I absolutely cannot pretend that this would work without wire from the start. I prefer to stick it in after the felting part is done, but he's just too long for that to really be possible without actually dissecting him. I keep piling on the core wool until he's chonky and ready to go. Once I'm satisfied with this actual log, I will now start on the mouth, which consists of 2 mini sausages wrapped up and slapped on. I cut the mouth out a bit more so that it's closer to the proper size. And then comes the struggle of forming the mouth around a really flimsy base. I kinda just keep adding wool until it starts to work here. There will be lots of cutting and readjusting as I go. True to real life salmon, this guy has a very funky shaped mouth, which is why the readjustments are necessary. Now comes the color, starting with the inside of the mouth. I let some of the red escape the mouth so that there isn't any visible gaps to the core wool underneath. He now looks a bit like a toddler who found his mom's lipstick, so let's clean him up by giving him his fishy lips. Before I really get into it, I realize how truly painful keeping the whole thing intact is, so I decapitate him to make my life much easier. I also take a chunk of the wire with it, since it was actually helping to shape the top jaw. And while I'm at it, I add in another wire to the bottom so that I can actually pose it properly. With the lips all shaped up, I can now start building up the rest of the head. Now he's got these little bumps on the side of his neck flab here, so I roll up little balls of wool, felt them on, and flatten them a bit. But at this stage they stick out a little bit too much, so what I like to do with bumps like these is to felt on a really thin, loose piece of wool on top so that it kind of softens the edges and blends it down a little bit. You can see compared to the other side the difference that it makes. Under the neck there are some lines that I also need to add, but they're more like grooves that add texture rather than just lines. So I just felt a line down to get the indent in and then use my iron to define them even further. Well, you'll see the iron later when I get all the other little details of the head done, so I can do it all at once. Boris here has some very cube-shaped teeth. If you've done any amount of felting before, you know that it's really hard to nail geometric shapes. It's doable, but takes a lot of manipulating to get just right. While I try to figure out the best way to go about it here, I start by rolling up these little round nubs. I focus my felting on one side of the cube at a time until the surface is flat and the edge is mostly retained. Stabbing alone can only get me so far though, so once they're all felted, I use my iron to help flatten the sides even more. So that I can ensure nothing messes up these little cubes, I spray some glue on each of them. Once they dry, I give them all one more final trim and add them to the mouth. Okay, the head is almost ready to be put back onto the body now, but before that I gotta do the eyes, and I thought it would be really cool to make them light up. I really want to do lights more with a lot of my projects, but the wiring part is the part that I hate the most. So I actually found like a different solution for this that actually would work perfectly for this, and that's these little guys. Instead of having to do any wiring or anything, these little guys, they have batteries in them, and you just twist them, and they light up. The main issue would be trying to figure out how I should approach this to make the eyes actually glow, and I think I know what I'm gonna do here. For the eyes here, I think I'm going to be using this translucent clay. Now the eye pieces are all baked and cooled. I baked some extra pieces too that I will be using later, so I'll put them off to the side for now. I used the eye to trace out where the socket will be and cut out a decent sized cavity for it and the lights to fit into. So one of the issues with these lights is that they're actually like really hard to twist. Like, you know, you can see the indentation it leaves on my finger just from trying. So I'm like, how can I get these to turn on in like the easiest way possible? So this is what I came up with. I just glued the bottom half to this and then look at that. Easy. And I could still twist these off and change the batteries if I need to. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to attach these to the top half. See if that works out. I have a slight feeling that it might not work out and that I'll just leave these as like removable. But yeah, we'll see. After trying it out, I don't think attaching the eye to the light would work out that well, so separate it is. To finish up the little eye cap, I want to make them nice and shiny with some UV resin. I also painted them yellow off screen because I'm a professional YouTuber. I had them standing on these sticks because in a previous attempt the resin would just pool around the bottoms of the eyes and it would look really yucky in the end. This also holds them in place while I spread the resin and allows it to spread a lot more evenly. I need to make the eyelid that goes around the eye. Because I can't felt on top of the eye itself, I need to pre-felt it and then attach it to the socket around where the eye would go. Alright, this is what they look like lit up. I gotta say, they look pretty cool. Except on this side, there's like, I think it's impossible to see on camera when it's lit up, but there's like this line that's going through it. And I think that might have had to do with the paint. Maybe I didn't put it on evenly enough, but you know, hopefully it's not too big of a problem. It doesn't show up on camera, so it should be fine, right? And that's the most detailed part of this whole guy almost done. He does have hair, but I will do that after he's reunited with his body and the rest of him is mostly done. Because of how long he is, this is gonna be extremely awkward to try to get him back on his body. I am reusing some of the old trimmings though, so at least all of that wool doesn't go to waste. But it looks like the head was a little bigger than I intended. Pretty on brand for me. So, gonna need a lot more wool. Before he becomes impossible to bend, I twist Boris into a more coiled pose and then finish up the bulking. When that's done, I add a super rough layer of each of the colors. I don't know if I even need to do this because his whole body will be covered in scales a bit later, but I guess I'll do it anyway. Before I torture myself with the scale process, I want to make his little fins first, and I do that by cutting out the shapes with pre-felt and adding wool on top. After those are done, I stick in some wires and then attach them to the body. The last thing now is to add in the red lines for the gills. Now the body is finally ready for scales. I would lose my actual mind if I tried felting all of them, so I'm going to be cutting them out of felt instead, which it turns out was much worse than just felting them. But we'll get back to that. I spend an obscene amount of time here cutting out the scales individually in a variety of colors since Boris seems to have a very colorful assortment of them on his back. I really wish I could have used my Cricut to cut out all of these for me, but I have tried using felt with that thing before and it just chews them up really bad and I end up wasting a lot of felt that way. So not even going to bother setting that up again. I've got a decent amount of scales to start with, so I start layering them on the body, starting from the end of the body and going upwards towards the head. The reason I started where I did instead of at the end of the tail is because this boy wears pants and it would get all covered up anyway. In case you're wondering why I have my fingers wrapped up in this black tape, well, the sheer amount of cutting I had to do for these scales was actually creating blisters on my fingers. So before those got worse, I needed to add some padding to protect them, because let me tell you, it got painful after a while. You may be looking at this and thinking, wow, those colors really don't go together, do they? And this whole thing looks kind of bad, doesn't it? And you would be right. So after so many hours, days, trying out this method and trying to make it work, it's not. It looks bad. I don't like it. I guess, yeah, I don't know, maybe the colors just they don't match at all with the wool I was already using. They're too bright. Honestly, the chalk pastels suck too because they keep getting on my hands, turning them green. So I'm just going to rip them out and start all over. That's just how it is though. Sometimes you gotta understand something's not working and then just do it again. Just do it a different way. Admit defeat and move on. One of the reasons I was really hoping that this would work out for me is because I was able to control the size of the scales and keep them pretty consistent with each other. It's going to be a lot harder to do with the wool. I'll just have to be careful and make sure that everything is staying consistent as I go. I am going to leave the part of me doing all this in because I'm sure someone somewhere could probably do the same thing and then also do it better. Now I go and start from scratch the proper way. I start by making sure the colors already on the body are blocked out in the right places and are even, since they will serve as my guidelines. Making sure I'm getting the right color scales in the right spots and I don't go off track. This whole process is really awkward because of the curled up pose. Straightening him out would make everything a lot easier, but with all this felting, he will not be very bendable soon. Speaking of the pose, another challenge that comes from that is needing to overlap the scales in a way that makes sense for how the body is bent. Very difficult to do on the fly like this, so there will be a lot of fixing as I go. I go back in with my single needle now to refine some of the edges, and add some more color to random ones here and there, hoping it doesn't look super out of place like it did earlier. And I think it definitely looks much better than the first try at this. This is a good example of why it's best to not take shortcuts with things, even when those shortcuts might have actually been worse and harder to pull off after all. But there's absolutely no shame in admitting that something is just not working out and you need to approach it a different way. I actually redo major things for projects pretty frequently. In the moment, it sucks having to do it again, but it's always worth the extra effort in the end. And now you can see, after ironing them all down to flatten them and emphasize the grooves, the scale hell I've been in for 2 full days is now over. And actually that means he's very close to being done altogether. He just has a couple more details left, like the tail fin, which I'm glad I left out until the end because it would have been completely destroyed by all the twisting the body went through. The little hand fins suffered greatly for this reason. I had to give them a little attention after all this since they were in pretty rough shape. After attaching the fin to the tail, I can start on my favorite detail for all the salmonids, their pants. I'm not sure if the mic is picking up on this or not, but there's like some tornado sirens going on right now, and it looks like the actual apocalypse outside, so you know, that's fun. Love that. You know what? I'm just gonna like show you guys because this is kind of crazy. That's what it looks like outside right now. It is currently 6 o'clock in June. And it looks like nighttime. That is pretty nasty. Currently pouring. Maybe my mic is picking up on that too, I don't know. Uh-oh. The lights are flashing. Ooh, uh-oh. Okay, I think I might actually have to stop recording right now. Good news, everyone. I survived the apocalypse, and now I can finally finish this guy's pants. There's one more part to these pants before I can call them done, but we'll come back to that later. The last part of him that needs to be felted is his hair. At least I think that's hair. Anyway, it is once again very boxy and also kind of segmented, which really complicates it. So I'm going to start with the biggest one and cut out some rectangles from felt and kind of separate that chunk into layers. I stacked the pieces based on how thick they need to be and felt those together, covering up the sides in wool to make them look more seamless. Then I iron the edges to get them nice and crispy and do the same with the other hair pieces. I haven't done something like this before, so I wasn't sure if it would work, but I think it all worked out in the end. With those all done, I need to kind of cut out a section in the head so that they can slide into, since they're so bulky and it wouldn't look quite right to just stick them on top of the head. And there we have it. Boris is now complete. Except for his accessories, of course, but that's the fun part. Before I start on those, I need to give him a nice light spritzing of glue just to make sure the fibers don't fall apart from all the handling. While I wait for the glue to dry on him, I am gonna start on one of his accessories, which honestly I'm kind of excited about it. So around his body, he's got these light bulbs strung up around him. And I thought at first, like, I'm just gonna buy, like, some light bulbs off of Amazon or something and just kind of figure out how to make them light up themselves, but none of them just kind of they didn't look good enough. So I thought, okay, is there a way I can make them myself from scratch? And taking some of the lights from earlier, the same ones I used in the eyes, I thought, what if I could use these little glass balls that I found. They got little holes in them, and then I just kind of make a little homemade light bulb. I think it works pretty well. They even got little holes too in the top here to be strung up. It's literally perfect. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take these and I'm going to use resin to attach these to them. So they aren't the exact shape that they're supposed to be. Like they're a little bit more like kind of egg-shaped, I guess, in the reference, but you know, this is the best I can do. But what I can do to at least alter the shape a little bit is I can always glue or resin these little glass cabochons to the bottom. It's not perfect, but it does something. So yeah, it should work out. Hopefully. We'll see. I also have to be very careful. These things are very fragile. Like, more than half of them came shattered when I ordered them, so they're very breakable. Also made some of these with the translucent clay, and I'm gonna use them as like, I'm gonna see if I can put them inside these glass balls to make it look like the filament of a light bulb. And they're transparent, so hopefully the idea is I want them to look like they're illuminated from the light. So I have no idea if that's actually going to work out, but we'll see. Because the lights illuminated the eyes super well, so like, you know, that's the hope. So it doesn't illuminate these like filament thingies as well as I would have liked them to. So I'm probably gonna have to do this like one at a time and just kind of hold it in place to make sure that it actually stays while it's curing. So this will be a long process. It's not the exact effect I wanted, but it's hard to tell on camera, but in real life, it's not perfect. I'm debating whether these will actually look better without the filaments in them or not. I'll have to think about this for a second before I do any more. What I ended up doing was keeping the filaments, but remaking them so that they were half the size of the first batch and making them hollow. That way more light can get through the whole tube and hopefully illuminate it a little bit more. It didn't work out exactly like I was hoping, but I think it's an improvement over the first batch, so I'll take it. After all the filaments are attached, I then drop a glob of resin in the openings of the glass and press the lights to them until they are all secured. And there we have it. Cute tiny light bulbs. Now we move on to all the other little accessories that Boris has all over his body. First are these little doohickeys that are kind of like ports that plug into his neck. Basically, I start with some circles I cut out using various round options I can find within arm's reach to stamp out some perfect circles. I use Bacon Bond to attach the smaller circles to the bigger ones, and then add a little nub to the end. I smooth it all out and poke a little hole in it so that I can stick a different kind of wire in it after baking. After these pieces are finished, I add a wire into the underside for some added help securing them to the body. since in the past for me, hot glue alone wasn't enough. They aren't all that perfect really, but clay has never been something I've been super great with. Those are done, and now I can make the little clippy guys that connect to his suspenders. I use the felt to measure out how wide I need the loop to be and then trim out 2 little rectangles. I cut out the inside, round out the edges, and put it into the oven for just a couple minutes to pre-bake it so I can add the clip onto it without deforming it. With those all nice and solid, I can wrap some more clay around it to make the clip. On the model, it looks like there's only 1/2 of the clip actually modeled, so I will only do 1/2 too. The final piece is the little pan that he holds in his mouth. I start by making the bottom of it by tracing a circle out from this roll of electrical tape and then adding a strip of clay around the rim for the sides of this thing. I try to smooth it out as best as I can. Again, I'm not very good with clay, so the things I make always end up lumpy. But in this case, with the object being made out of metal that was forged by fish, I think I can get away with it looking a little rough. Next are the bars that the strap will feed into, so I made the little nubs for those and then stick a wire in for the bar itself. It's okay that it's a different material since it will be covered by the strap anyway. The pan also has handles right above these, but I will pre-bake them before sticking them into their respective nubs so I don't have to worry about them losing their shape. Finally, there's a tube that goes down his throat and feeds into the pan. I'll finish them off by giving them some color and sealing it with Mod Podge. Once all that is dried, I can stick them into their places on the body. Starting with the mouthpiece, I feed the strap into the little slots and glue them down. I measure the strap to fit the jaw and then glue the other end as well before gluing the entire thing into his mouth. I do the same to the little node things on the sides of his neck and face. Seeing them here up against the body makes me realize that maybe I made the colors a little bit too light. Hopefully it isn't too distracting, because I don't want to change it now. Next are the suspenders, starting again by feeding the strap through the clips and gluing them down. Then I stick them into the body like the others and measure out the third strap so it can wrap around the body perfectly before cutting and gluing it all as well. The straps also seem to have some darker green on them, so I cut out little pieces and add them where they need to go. The final thing I need to do now is the wiring, but with the electrical kind. Boris has some big alligator clips attached to the plate in his mouth, so I have real ones here that are almost the perfect size. I feed a black and red wire into both and then use the matching color electrical tape to cover them both. Into the nodes, I feed a small section of white wire into each and carefully measure each one so that they are long enough to meet up with the colored wire. Then I tape them all together to finish them off. I'll be saving the lights for the very end when the base is done since I do not want them to break during all of this. So we will move on to that part right now. Before that though, actually, I did make a little booyah bomb to fit in his mouth. There are tiny magnets inside it which don't work super well, but are just barely strong enough to hold it in place, which is enough for me. And now I can figure out how to get the base to work so that this man can stand up straight. I use these wooden circles for most of my projects, but due to his size, I will need to use a few of them side by side to get to the correct size. It ended up turning into a complete mess of circles, but luckily the commissioner wanted the base to be felted, so all this nastiness will be covered up in due time. Now comes the challenge of getting this thing to actually stand up. I start that process by drilling a hole in the base for the wire to go into, though that wire is not nearly enough to support his weight and will need the help of several acrylic dowels. I start with the midsection and mark on the base where I need the dowel to slot into. Learning from the experience with Devil Joe last video, I use one of my rounded chisels to carve out a perfectly sized hole and stuff it with glue to secure the rod. Then I see where on the body I would need to cut and stick the other end of the dowel into him with another glob of glue to keep it in place. With that, I can now carefully add even more rods to various other parts of the body for extra stability, including doubling up this middle one later with a second one, since that's the main point of structure for all of this. And now I finally got this guy to a point where he isn't so wobbly. Now I need to work on making this base look less hideous. I'm going to make the base look like crashing waves, like he's floating above the ocean. I'm not really experienced with background things like this, so hopefully it looks okay in the end. I'm going to sketch out how I want all of the waves to look so that I can go into this with a plan and know what I'm doing ahead of time. Just kidding, I'm gonna throw a bunch of wool at it until it works. I do want to say it was so hard to find references for waves that weren't AI. I really hate the internet now. I went with something that might not exactly be realistic, but hopefully is a nice enough set piece. For the color, I start with the darkest one first at the base of the waves. The tops I cover with a lighter blue. When the base colors are added, I then really roughly mix together the dark and light colors together, leaving me with this partially mixed batch that has large chunks of both colors undisturbed. I do this because waves have a lot of variation in shapes and colors, and I don't want all of this to blend in seamlessly. I take a chunk and spread it out really thin and just felt it on as is, fighting every instinct in me telling me I need to fix the mess and make it all look neat and tidy. I hope what I'm saying makes any sense, cause I feel like it doesn't, but it's kinda hard to put into words. I really am just stabbing random colors into this thing and hoping it looks somewhat like water. I feel like this looks more like weird, ugly mountains in the end. I'll just have to try this out more in the future to get it right. Last part is the white splashy parts, which are my favorite. I felt extremely loose pieces onto the tops of the waves and let a lot of it hang off and try to keep it really fluffy looking. I use spray glue to lock it all in place as best as gravity will allow it to and reshape it as it dries. And that's the base as done as I think I can make it. The final detail now is to string up those lights. Luckily they have these little holes in them that perfectly fit this black cord. I string them all up and adjust them on the body so that they are all in their appropriate spots. And that is this big boy finally done, and I can finally take a break from giant projects for a bit.